We have some big news coming from the Hershey company this morning. We can see they're currently up around 13% on the day, and before they were actually in the red for the year, but after this news, they're actually up by about 6% over the past year, and year to date, they're again now close up to around 6%, trading at about $197.22. So what is going on with this stock? Well, it was just announced this morning that Hershey took a big jump up amid a report of Mondelez's takeover approach. And this all stems from a Bloomberg report. Now, obviously, this is very early in the process and there's no certainty whatsoever that this will actually go through. But let's take a look at this and see what it means for Hershey's. Now, to put things into context, if we come down here, we can see Hershey currently has a market cap of about $35.35 billion. And if we look at MDLZ, Mondelez International, they have a market cap of about $84 billion. So this company is twice the size of Hershey. So in that sense, an acquisition could make sense. Now, this isn't the first time these two companies have had acquisition talks, actually. In fact, back in 2016, this is something they discussed, but Mondelez actually walked away from a potential Hershey deal. So what was going on there? Let's talk about it for a moment. Well, if we jump over to my stock screener, let's come up here and plug in HSY Hershey. And again, all this data will automatically load in, and you can get access to the ticker data add-on that allows you to automatically import stock financials straight into your spreadsheet, and also get access to all my spreadsheets at tickerdata.com, link in the description. But if we come over here and look at the earnings for Hershey, look right here. In 2016, the company was producing about $3.45, and if we look at last year, 2023, it was sitting at $9.09. So earnings have significantly grown for this company in a pretty short period of time. So obviously, Hershey's going to be worth quite a bit more now than they were then. But if you look in 2016, we can see Mondelez was offering to buy Hershey's for about $23 billion. So let's take a step back. Let's zoom out and look at Hershey's over the past 10 years. If we look at about 2016, we can see right here, they're trading below $100 per share, around $95 for the majority of 2016. And like we just saw on my stock screener at the time, it looks like the company had earnings per share of about $3.45. So let's put this into perspective. If we go over to Seeking Alpha and click on charting, which by the way, Seeking Alpha is having their Black Friday sale still, check them out if you're interested. But if you come over here to select metrics, we want to look at a valuation metric, price to earnings for the trailing 12 months, and we'll update this chart. Here's what we're going to see if we zoom out and look at the past 10 years. If we look at the price to earnings ratio for Hershey in 2016, it was pretty much the highest it had been in the entirety of the past decade, sitting about 35 and once getting as high as over 50. But if we look at the price to earnings ratio for Hershey right now, it's actually the lowest it's been in a decade, sitting close to around 19 or even 20. Now, one of the things we have to remember is earnings can be manipulated by management through different methods. So let's look at the price to cash flow ratio. We'll go ahead and update this and remove price to earnings and update our chart. And what we can see is a little bit of a different story, but it's still pretty similar. In 2016, we can see the company's price to cash flow ratio ranged anywhere as low as around 19 all the way up to around 25. But if we look at where the company is right now, they're sitting at about 15. So when we look at Hershey's from an earnings and a cash flow perspective, the company's trading at its lowest valuation in the past decade, which if you're in the position of looking to acquire Hershey's, obviously is pretty attractive. So even though this company offered about $23 billion to acquire Hershey's, even though Hershey is worth significantly more right now, it's estimated about $45 billion including debt, it looks like the company's actually a better value even right now. And keep in mind, from a shareholder perspective, Hershey's has still been really good from a dividend perspective. Starting dividend yield right now sitting about 2.76, and before the news today it was closer to about 3%. But look at the dividend growth the company has seen over the past 5 years, close to 13%, in the past 10 years, above 10%. So very solid dividend growth. But buying Hershey's right now certainly does not come without some future headwinds and some current headwinds. And mainly what I'm talking about right now is cocoa prices. What we're looking at right here is a chart of cocoa prices over the past 10 years, and from 2015 all the way up to around 2022, we can see they remained pretty stable, not a whole lot of fluctuation, which is a huge advantage for Hershey's. But look at how it's skyrocketed over the past couple of years. At one point, it was 4 times higher than it was back in 2022. Now, it's come back just a little bit, but it's still significantly higher than it was back in 2022, still about 3 times higher. And if we jump over to my profitability sheet, we can see last year, the company had a gross profit ratio of about 44.7, which was close to the 10-year average. But let's take a closer look at this. If we come down here and use the ticker data function to pull in the most recent quarter's gross profit ratio, I'll select Hershey, gross profit 2024, and then select Q3 and hit enter. What we can see is these cocoa prices are starting to play a major role in the gross profits for this company. The gross profit ratio in Q3 was sitting at 41.26. So we're talking about a pretty significant difference from last year's gross profit ratio of 44.7. And in fact, if we jump over to my free cash flow sheet and look at Hershey's, what I want to pay attention to is the free cash flow margin for this company. This is telling us out of all the revenue the company generates, how much is actually becoming free cash flow. So for example, we can see in 2023, the company had a free cash flow margin of about 13.9%. which if we compare it to the past 4 or 5 years is significantly lower. We can see it ranged anywhere from about 15.4 to as high as 18.1. So out of all the revenue the company is generating, less is finding its way to the bottom line and becoming free cash flow, which is not a good sign. Now, if we look at the bright side, a free cash flow margin of 13.9 is still better than where the company was sitting from 2013 to 2017. So that is the good news. So yes, cocoa prices are playing a major role in the margins for this company. So the question we want to ask, is this going to be continued? Will there be a downtrend here in the future? So let's talk about cocoa production for just a moment. First off, 2 countries in West Africa make up about 60% of the global production. So the production is very centralized. And the main issue has been the weather and disease within the trees producing cocoa. And so when we talk about trees and plants, that's not really something you can fix overnight. But if we keep scrolling down, one of the things we also need to highlight is that earlier this year, the Ghana Cocoa Board, regulator of the country's cocoa sector, secured a World Bank loan of about $200 million to rehabilitate plantations affected by the cocoa virus. The board will take over disease-ridden farms, remove and replace afflicted cocoa trees, and nurture new plantings to the fruiting stage before returning them to the farmers. So there is action being taken here. So the market as a whole, investors seem to be very excited at the thought of Hershey's being acquired. Again, they're up around 14% as of this very moment. But one of the things we have to understand is, like JP Morgan analyst Ken Goldman pointed out, it's a little bit more difficult for Hershey's to be acquired than most companies. And the reason behind this is because the company has a dual closed stock structure. Basically, any deal would require the backing of Hershey's Trust Company, which owns almost all of Hershey's Class B stock. And Class B stock is not publicly traded, so we have to keep that in mind. So this trust has roughly 80% of the voting power at the company. So really, it's going to boil down to whether or not the trust has interest in Hershey being acquired. So yes, there is headwinds in the cocoa market, but I can see why a company like Mondelez would be interested in Hershey at its current prices. Again, they're still in the very early stages of this discussion, but this does definitely appear to be good news for Hershey shareholders. So let me know what you think of this news in the comments down below. And like always, if you'd like to be able to download any of my spreadsheets and also get access to the Ticker Data add-on in Google Sheets that allows you to automatically import stock financials, then you can head over to tickerdata.com at the link in the description. So with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.